It is Tuesday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. Okay. So yesterday I posted a video about shoulder impingement that's gaining in popularity. It's on YouTube as well. But I got a bunch of comments on that. One of the comments was, hey, could you talk about forward head posture, because a lot of us are dealing with that. And so I thought it would be a nice little tie-in to the shoulder. And so we'll just move up a level, so to speak, and we'll start talking about the neck and head position with this forward head. But let's be really clear about what we're talking about. So by traditional measures, what we're going to talk about is lower cervical flexion, upper cervical extension. And so the way we would describe this orientation from my perspective is that we've got concentric orientation of musculature on the posterior occiput going to the upper cervical spine. So that's concentric oriented, so anything below that from C3 on down would be eccentrically oriented. If we turn things around, we look at things from the front, we're going to use the hyoid bone as our representation of above and below. So below the level of the hyoid bone, we're going to have concentric orientation of those infrahyoid muscles, and we're going to have eccentric orientation of the musculature above the hyoid that goes to the mandible. The result of all of this is going to be a passive retrusion of the mandible, and these are the people that you're typically going to see excessive amounts of mandibular opening. That would often be described as hypermobility. So they might have clicking with opening and closing, but they're also going to obviously see this magnified opening. And so that's a nice way to tell when you've made an adjustment of some sort or an effective change, that you'll see a reduction in this excessive opening. I think the forward head posture has always been looked at in isolation, and so the strategies that have been utilized have been somewhat ineffective because they're trying to do a piecework when this is a relationship problem that is a resultant of all of the things that happen below the head and the neck. So typically what you're going to see with this traditional forward head posture is this is going to appear most often on people with narrow ISAs that lack the full breathing excursion. So we're going to treat them as such. So we got to think about the relationship of the axial skeleton to the neck, to the head, to the mandible, when we're talking about how we're going to effectively work in this situation to try to restore as many movement options as possible. So when we're talking about moving towards an exercise strategy, the quadruped activities are a great place to start, because we're going to get dorsal rostral compression under those circumstances, but we're going to get the up pump handle. So the downward pump handle is typically going to be associated with this forward head posture, as well as the compressive strategy that we'll see on the posterior aspect of the rib cage below the level of the scapula. Quadruped fits really well because we get expansion in both of those areas that are typically going to be compressed. So your forward reaches also fall into this. So there's a whole series of arm bar activities that would be effective in the gym. Your cable reaches are going to be effective in the gym. And so again, we don't have to throw people on the ground and turn them into rehab clients. Now, a little counterintuitive. So we think about the strategies associated with the narrow ISAs and where we're going to see those compressive strategies. So if I bring up my guy again, so we're going to see compression from the scapula down into the lower posterior rib cage. We're also going to see the compressive strategy in the lower part of the pelvis. So hinging activities are now on the table as far as helping us to restore movement options, because what we're looking to do is we're trying to restore a normal exhalation strategy without compensation. And so now, if we can teach somebody to hinge effectively, that posterior lower aspect of the pelvis will move from its concentric to eccentric orientation. If we can effectively maintain position in the thorax under those circumstances as well, then we're going to get the lower posterior rib cage to expand as well. And so we can actually use deadlifts to help us restore normal movement options in these cases of forward head posture. So that's actually pretty cool when you think about it, because we rarely talk about deadlifts being useful in restoring movement options because of their compressive nature. So the thing that we have to consider in these circumstances is, do I have any other superficial compressive strategies that would preclude me from using a deadlift under these circumstances. So there's a lot of variations that we can use. So we could use like a Camperini deadlift, which would help us promote the expansive capabilities. A snatch grip RDL is actually very, very effective in keeping the lower posterior rib cage expanded with the appropriate instructions. So again, there's a lot of how you do things in influencing this as well. But like I said, the really cool thing about this is we can use our hinging activities. And then once we've actually restored our movement capabilities, now we can actually keep some of these activities in the training program. So now you've got your kettlebell swings that are back on the table, and like I said, all of your deadlift variations as well. So we don't have to look at this forward head thing in isolation as it would typically be prescribed. We have to look at this as a relationship problem, and the forward head posture is merely the result. So hopefully that sheds a little bit of light on this forward head posture thing. Hope it's useful. If it's not, please ask another question and we can go deeper into detail as we need to. Have a great Tuesday, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.